Welcome to the Millionaire Mastery webinar. Again, my name is Dominic A. Chirella, 7 to 7 Best Business and Life Strategy. Also, the treasurer of National Hispanic Landscape Alliance. We have a collaboration going on, these webinars to help the Hispanic landscaper and also everyone that's landscaping and probably everyone that's doing some snow plowing this out the year. We've been very lucky in New England. We have not had very much snow. And Bob Bullock is joining us from California. And Bob, I'm not sure if you get any snow out there in your neck of the woods.
Well, we had hard frost here. Remember, I just moved here from Rhode Island last year, so I missed the big snows last year. Where I'm at, Northern California, no, but about an hour or two up from me in the mountains, they are getting lots of snow, which we're all excited about, and we've been getting lots of rain. Thank you, El Nino. So that's where we are, but it's pretty sunny here for the most part.
Great. I like to be able to start. I'm not sure if we had some video snafus, and I want to read this quote from Stephen Jobs again, because this is really why we're here. And it speaks to why we're here. I'm convinced that about half of what separates successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. It goes on to say, everyone says that they go the extra mile, but almost no one does. Most people just think, wait, no one else is here. Why am I doing this? And they leave, never to return. That is why it is so important to go the extra mile. It's a lonely place, but it's filled with opportunities. It is going to be hard. Over time, it'll make you incredible success. So welcome. My name is Dominic Chirella. I'm founder of 7 to 7 Best, and welcome. Welcome to the Millionaire Mastery and webinar series for 2016. The 3 massive mistakes landscaper owners make that frustrates them while growing their business and making more profits. Special thanks, Bob, for coming over here to this webinar all the way over from the coast. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about both of us over here. I'd like to be able to tell you about ourselves so that we can keep you context and see why you should be even listening to us. So my name is Dominic A. Chirella, student, a teacher, coach, speaker, 7 to 7 Best. Now, I was quote-unquote a landscaper in high school and college days. It afforded me just a little comfort, more just like my friends, cars, trips, clothes, and of course, more times to do the things that I wanted. But it also afforded me a computer engineering degree. So, but I have to say is after graduating, I love landscaping. I love to be outside. I love to run my own business. So I became a partner in a $400,000 landscaping company. Very creative, very collaborative, and we worked our little hearts out. We grew to 750 in 10 years. It was great. But I have to tell you, it was just an amazing time because we had good clients, good people, good workers, good machinery, and we were 2 partners that just wanted to do it. We come from Italian background. So, but what's going to happen though is once we started getting to about 750, we found that we had about 8 crews, 24 people, but the chaos started. I have to say that I am a smart guy. My partner's a smart person. How the heck can we not do this? So that's when the chaos started. And that's when it started not being any more fun. Okay, it was just really overwhelming. Constant sales talking, constant issues, employees, unmanageable. And I have to say, it wasn't that they were unmanageable. I couldn't manage them. I had just too many people working for me. Just the work that had to go on during the day. You set the crews up in the morning. You do all that work. Then you start coming back at nighttime, and then you still have to work. So I still had a family to attend to, but I knew that I had to come back and work day and night. And then the invoicing and accounts payable and the payroll and then the schedule, on and on and on. It just went on forever, 24/7. But there was a turning point in all this. Is I was blessed with triplets, and that was one of the best reasons for me to say is I really have to start doing something in a new way. So I needed to have more time with my family. I needed to have more profits and more money. So how do we do this? You know, how do you go through from this? But that's when the journey started. And I have to say is I hired many consultants, some good, some not so good, but I think it was more like a fit. Great coaching from the E-Myth, Dale Carnegie, and from my friend and associate, Bob Bullock. Hundreds of books, getting things done, covering Napoleon Hill, and then going constantly to these events. But that's when the blood, sweat, and tears paid off, and we went from 750 to 15 million. And even a higher note, after selling my business in 2010, I took the leap, and I'm starting to coach now in business development. I love what I do. I love to help this industry out. So that's my story, and I'd like you to pull you over to Bob to tell you a little bit about him, to tell you what he's going to be offering us today. Bob, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Actually, I've been on my own for a very long time. I started out my first business. I really couldn't call it landscaping, but I mowed lawns. I walked up and down the neighborhood with a lawnmower, cutting grass. So that was a start. Went on and did the same thing in high school, as well as worked in the restaurants. And even as a high school kid, I ended up managing shifts in a very productive restaurant. I learned a lot about management there and about juggling a lot of different people and things, even as a high school kid. Then from there, I went to the military and learned a whole lot about leadership while in the rivers in Vietnam. Got out, went back to landscaping on an island called Fisher's Island. Fisher's Island has very exclusive summer homes for very, very wealthy folks. DuPonts, Firestones were of that level. And I worked with my father-in-law, first with a construction company, and then later on we developed our own company, and learned a bit about how to make that work. But my true love was music. I eventually left, went to school, studied composition, arranging, music, went on the road and performed for a number of years. Then I had to make a choice between that career and my family. It was a very difficult career. I loved it, yet my family meant more to me. So out of an 8-piece group, 7 were married, 6 got divorced. Mine was the only one that stayed together. And that was the reason for that. And I knew I had to do something different, much in the way that Dominic described. I read a ton of books, I studied with other people, and I started, believe it or not, a hypnotherapy practice. And I studied that. I actually went back to school, studied neurolinguistic programming and a number of other disciplines, and had 3 offices open, employees, a whole gamut, and was teaching at the local college level. From that, I just kept getting a lot of business people come to me with issues, with business issues. And what I discovered was there were very few business problems. There were lots of people problems and communications problems. And so I spun off into consulting. And 35 years of consulting and communications, getting into organizations, helping them really organize their world to increase the productivity of the people, to hire good people, to train those people, to see the resources in their people and in good communications and education. So I did very well. Recently moved out west to be near my family, my son and his family, and here I am. And of course, spent some time with Dominic and his company. Very fortunate to have been there. We developed a friendship, as I have in a number of the companies I've communicated with and worked with. And that in a nutshell. And it took that perseverance as well. Just when you say, I don't know if I can do that much further, you stick that little bit more and it just continues to grow and it gets easier. That's me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you, Bob. And there we go. Trying to get this back up on here is I'm having some technical snafus here. One moment. Look at that thing there. There we go. No. Sorry, everybody in the audience here, but I'm having some really technical snafus here. And I am going to fix this. Stop. Okay. There we go. Entire screen. Share. And I'm going to, now let's see if that's the trick. And boom. Hi, guys. Is this going to work right now? There we go to that one. We're a little bit behind. We're having stuff there. I'm going to pick this and put that there. Is beautiful. There we go. So enough about us and snafus here. Let's put that into this webinar. We're going to look at some really good things here. We're going to look at the top 3 massive mistakes that most landscapers make that keep them from growing their business and making more profits. Now, most importantly, we're going to discuss today is how to avoid these 3 mistakes. We're also going to give you really practical strategies that you're going to be able to immediately start growing your business with more profit. We have some things that we're going to be able to download that you could be able to use immediately. So let's go down right now and go right down into the mistake number 3. The first biggest mistake companies do is they don't develop their team. They spend the time, the resources, the money by employees. So the career development, the education, it gives a greater odds of just more success. So when you go to these successful owners, when you go to the best companies, when you ask these employees, you walk around a place, when you see what happens, you ask anybody in these successful companies and what contributes to their success, and you're going to get one of these answers are going to be is not only the leaders, but it's going to be that they develop continuously. And I like to tell you, I'd like to give you the same answer. When we grew from 750 to 15 million, that's the same answer. I think the top reason we had success was that we took and developed and educated each and every employee. These are the employees. It's almost going from like me, 750K, into 100 mini-me's at 15 million. So one of the most important reasons is to give the training team so they could be a value part of the company. Now, why is this important? Why do we have to do this? And really, what's going to happen if you don't? Better developed employees have a better chance of success in the organization. It's simple as that. They are more satisfied with their employment. Now, I had some research that I just looked up on the computer. Great research. It was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it's a multinational professional services. It has over 40,000 employees, and they did a survey. They said to them is, what do employees seek and value most in their position or role? When they got these answers back, they were a little surprised, and so am I. Firstly, was growth. They wanted to see growth in the company. They wanted to see their company grow. They wanted to see where it was going. They wanted to be part of something. Second was development. They wanted to be developed. They wanted to be educated. They wanted to have leadership. They wanted technical skills, but they wanted to be developed. Money was third. I mean, we're all out here to do that, and that's all we are interested. We're business people. That's what we do. So now, how do you apply these kind of concepts? How are we going to help you apply them? There's going to be 3 areas we're going to look at today. One is going to be hiring. One is going to be the orientation of your employee. And lastly is going to be how do you career develop in these positions or the future positions? How do you go into these kind of putting people and making them better? Now, technically, guidelines, I have an interview process. This kind of process is something that you have that's going to help you get the people that you want. And, you probably prepare for it. The actual tactical stuff. You set the date, the time. You review the resumes that you came in. You bring in a packet. And the packet is your strategic objective, your organizational charts, your positions, and you bring in your questions. You go and you greet, you interview them, you give them a brief an overview, and then you ask them for questions. And you have to listen to these people. You want to do them to do the most of the important talking. You set up a second interview if they're good, and then you describe the same thing, and then you escort them to the door. But I have to say something is the kind of questions you're going to look at are work record questions. You're going to look at goal orientations. How do you goal orientate? Learning abilities. You're going to look at their learning abilities. You're going to look at the interpersonal relationships. You're going to look at their ability to influence others. You look at what motivates them during the job. And lastly, you're going to see how they're going to be self-managed. But there is a secret ingredient to all this, to this hiring procedure. There is a secret ingredient to this kind of questions, these tactical questions. The secret ingredient is something that we do, and here's an example of Dilbert here. I want to interview the job. Let me know what you think. And why did you leave your last job? I punched my boss. He's exactly what we need. This is something that we have because they have the same values, the people. So what is the secret ingredient? It's core values. It's hiring to these values. Now, Bob, this is something that you have worked with me in my company and the many companies I work in now. And tactically, I have guidelines. I have information. It's easy to put that down into words 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do this, do this, do this, do that. But what we're really looking for is hire to values. Skill sets are what they're coming for, and you can always train for that. But I want to turn this over to you, Bob, because I want you to help us understand how do we hire to values.
Well, it's not only how, the importance of it. They surveyed a number of leaders, and the Harvard Business Review actually were doing a number of interviews. And one was with Dell, the computer company. And one of the things they discovered is, while strategy was very important, the operational discipline was important, talented people, of course. But when asked, what best explains the company's spectacular success over time and over the years, Michael Dell and his CEO, Kevin Rowlands, focused on something else. They said, while Dell does have a superior business model, and they have a good business model, the key to their success is years and years of DNA development that is not replicable outside of their company. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, that means they developed a culture based on values that were important to them as to how they did their business. And they hired people to those values. So the first stage in hiring somebody is really knowing and just what your values are. And we're going to get a little more to that later, I think, if we have time today. And if you don't, well, we'll be glad to help you with that at some point. So one of the important things, there's a question I use in my interviews, is are you coachable? I even use a little, I call it New Employee Coachable Index. It's a questionnaire. And this helps you recognize and even have them sign once they've actually done this little worksheet, they have to sign it, saying that it's true. Basically, it's true, and it gives you a score of how coachable they are or not. Because one of the things to develop a good company, and we mean take it from, say, $250,000, $500,000, over the $1 million plus mark, is having people in it that are coachable, open to learning, and to think like a business owner. In order to think like a business owner, you have to be coachable. You have to be willing to agree to set aside your normal way of behaving and behave in a way that an employer or the leader of a company is willing to pay for. And I think people forget that sometimes. And so if you spend a fraction of your time not only developing good system or good values, not only that, because most of you have, you built your company off of your values, who you are. Now, Have you taken the next step? Do you publish that? Does everybody in your company know what your values are? And I've had guys say yes, and I'll go around the company, nobody knew what they were. Or they had their own and they just made them up. And they weren't anything like the owner of the company's values. So they need to be published, and we'll discover what a value is. It's how you do business, how you want your company to do business. So the company has a personality and a culture that you're developing that creates success. And every company's is different. So what are the most important things to you about your company and how your company shows up to others? And then teaching those values and what it means to each and every employee. Every one of them needs to know that. So hiring people takes a good questioning process. Questioning not so much their skill, although you want that, but what do they care about? How do they handle situations that are much more emotionally based? So what's important to them in a company that they work for? Is it just a paycheck? You know, is it being the best that they can be, having opportunity to grow? And I always look for people who want to grow, who want to do better, who want to learn. So to me, education, knowledge is very important to me when I hire people. And so I think looking at the types of questions, I have a whole list of them. I have about 60 something questions into a 2-interview process, which begins to uncover what you have, the kind of person you have. Now the next piece of that is how do you interpret their responses. If they can just, you know, say whatever they think you want to hear, and you can buy that, and then you end up hiring somebody you didn't expect. Now there are ways to get past that. I've even asked people what's their secret aspiration. And all of a sudden they tell me a whole different story, and they're not the person you want to hire because their aspiration is not aligned with your company. And it doesn't matter if it's a brand new frontline, you're just going to push them more, or you're hiring somebody who's going to handle something much more complicated like pesticides and fungicides and various dangerous products. So it's very important at every level, especially leadership level. It's also been my experience that there are lots of people, which is a fabulous resource. One of your biggest resources. It's one of your biggest expenses. It's also your biggest investment in your company. That a lot of owners, because they're so busy, still wearing too many hats, by the way, there are people that have talents.
That's a good point, Bob, when you talked about like the word too many hats is because that is their value. Mm-hmm. And wearing all those hats, when I've been the same way, I could look in the mirror.
I remember when you were that way.
Right. So that when I wore all these hats, I wanted everybody else to wear the hats. Right. When I changed my values, not changed my value system, but understood that different values, our values became more of, we were system oriented. Mm-hmm. We serviced the client, period. We did. We worked with this through systems and processes. We did training. We did, and we had image. We had these 5 different values. So beginning, it was I would portray and say, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. But I wasn't that way. Later on, I was that way. So when I hired to these values. When I looked over there, I have an example. I had a man here for probably about 1.5 years, and it was really much too long. He was the best salesman that I had. I mean, he was aggressive. He knew how to talk to the client. We had very high-end clients. But what he wasn't was the second. He didn't work with systems. He didn't work with processes. He didn't want to be that way. And he caused havoc. He caused havoc with...
It's called crisis management. And a lot of companies, unintentionally, growing up, the more you hold on to that you're doing and not trusting others to be as good as you, and there'll never be anyone as good as you in your own mind, then you're going to be constantly putting out fires in your operation. That's what you're describing.
Well, that's your value system at the
That's
time
right.
doing that, your crisis management. I turned from a crisis manager to I was still the crisis manager type person, but it was
Mhm.
more acceptable. I liked the idea that there was going to be a serious problem that happened. Now, of course, please, don't let me get me wrong here that I loved problems, but when they did happen, they knew to come to me. They knew to be able to say is I knew one, we were going to solve the problem, and two, later on we were going to talk about it later to see if it was a system problem first, and then
Mhm.
if it was something along the line, if it was an education problem with the person. I
Right.
hate to look at if it became a person problem.
Right.
Again,
Then
that
that's
was
a
my
personality issue.
right.
And that goes back to hiring. If you're not hiring the person that best fits the personality of the company,
Right.
prepare for pain.
Yes. Right. Right. I went into a company just recently, a top company in Chicago. I brought some friends, I brought some associates, and we went to the place over there. This place was immaculate. I mean, a thing of beauty. But we were learning about values. We were learning about how to get this value statement in and how to
Mhm.
make your company that way. And what was not surprising to me, but surprising to them is no matter who we were talking to or who we were doing with, it was amazing that you could see the same type of feeling, the same type of values. We were walking into another room, and this was a foreman, and he bent over, picked a piece of paper off the ground, and then threw it away. And I had to later on tap one of my associate on the thing on the shoulder and say, "Hey, did you see that?" And he goes, "Yes, I did." I said, "Did anybody ask him to?" And it was that's a value of this place.
That's right.
So they hire to that. Now, not everybody's gonna have every single value. It's not the perfect world,
Well, that's
but
where you
when
go back to training, orientation and training.
right,
You bring somebody in. By the way, people get confused. They think orientation is the training. It's not. That's simply introducing people to your organization. Training is immersion, gets them deeply into, again, the culture of the company, how we do things. And if you have conflicting employees, and you bring a new person in and they get switched around to different people who have a totally different view of how things should be done in your organization, again, you can have growth to a certain level, it will implode or will not get past a certain point.
well, it'll give
If
you a headache too.
everybody, that's right, huge headache.
So, but that is the first part of this mistake that the owners make that to propel them into growth and to prepare, get more profits. Sure, you can
Right.
grow, but more profits. The biggest thing is the hiring. So I wanted to say that when you hire, the conclusion is you hire for
The values.
values. You must know your values. You must be able to build them. Our next part of our webinar. We're going to have, or we also have another webinar when we get to it on Thursday. We'll be able to discuss how to get these values. But when you could hire the values first, must know them, and then you
Mhm.
hire to skill set. That is the first of three parts to develop your
Mhm.
employees. Again, what is it going to do for you? It's going to give you better odds of hiring the right person. And it's going to give you better odds later on because, again, like you mentioned, more work in the beginning,
Right.
but at the very end, you're going to find yourself a better chance of having that right employee that acts like, when I say mini me, well, the owners are the values.
Well, I think loyalty is a huge piece of that. Loyalty and trustworthiness is values. And you can have your 3 to 5 key values, and inside each one of those are sub values that go with that. And again, it takes time to develop that. It may take, and if you've just grown and hired people, the banking industry ran into a problem because I used to consult to the banking industry. And all these big banks were buying up all these small banks. And the problem was the big bank had a culture and were adding all these other banks and their branches to theirs. It was like the Soviet Union. They could not, because of all the different cultures, they did not orientate them and educate the new banks So they were all operating under different cultures, and of course, it collapsed and created havoc and chaos throughout that industry. A lot of people didn't know that or knew what happened in the banking industry, and that's part of what happened. And as you build and build larger things, you need to go back to the drawing board with your existing employees. And don't make the mistake of thinking that everybody is there and on board with you. If you've got a 5-man team, well, then yeah, more than likely you guys are pretty together. And then as you grow bigger and bigger and bigger, you got to recognize that a lot of things aren't necessarily what you think they are. And really getting everybody together on the same page in terms of what your company stands for and how you're going to move forward together and put that process into place. And also what it means to each employee so that they have an understanding and that they're able to verbalize what each of those values the company has means to them and for themselves. We don't have the time to go into too much more depth with that. That's where it starts in the hiring. The better questions you have, and then shut up and listen. They will tell you everything you know. You do have to interpret. And
well, that's good over here.
Piece.
Well, I like to end with this section of the developing in the hiring area is that I have that list of various areas that we talked about, and it's this tactical stuff. And I like to offer that to our attendees. Dominic, DOMENIC at 7to7best.com. Email me, and I will get you that form. But I think a better form is, Bob, is your form, that you have the questions that give interviewers the way to be able to find out if you have these values.
Yeah.
Very good. I think you mentioned it was like, it's 60 questions. You don't need to have all of them, but if you could take a pile of them, I will also get you that also. So these two reports, one tactical, so you have everything in place, and then two, hire to values. And Bob, your form, I appreciate you offering it to all of the participants and the people that are working with us. So thank you.
Feel free to offer the new employee coachable index questionnaire as well. That'd be fine with me. I think anything that improves communications, relationships, and companies out there is why I do what I do. I love to see people get better and improve.
Okay, so what's going to say is that we're going to just, from Bob, you have the new employee coachable index report and the revealing interview questions. Both of those are, again, talk to me, email me, and my report is more of a tactical nature, more structured things this way that can help you actually put everything together so you have it all together, the interview process. The second part of development is the orientation. And I know, Bob, that you spoke about it a little bit. You talked about the orientation. I like to start off and talk a little bit about this orientation. What we do here is orientation is a 3-month process, and it is not the whole development. The development goes on forever, or as long as the person wants to advance in the company, it is forever. But you are constantly working with people. But the first 3 months orientation, that second part is so important, because the tools you have is you have the position, which gives you the results. It gives you the tactical stuff. It gives you what you're supposed to be doing. It gives you the systems that you would be using. It gives you the templates you'll be using, and it'll give you the people you're working with. That's one of the forms that you have with the orientation. The second part is having a good mentor. You will find that people say, I don't have the time. If you're in a crew, you're going to assign the foreman to them to be mentored. If you are a foreman and you have the next level of supervisors, and supervisor has 6 to 8 foremen, well, the supervisors are going to be your mentor. If you're in an office, usually your office manager is the mentor. In the sales department, your sales manager. As a leader, I was a leader. I also mentored all my top level people or anybody else that needed it. But I kept it with the top because you only could do so much. So with armed with your position, armed with the tools of the systems that you used, armed with a mentor, you have, and of course you have written values down because you hire to these values. Now you put them on a 3-month mentoring program, an orientation program. And the reason you do this is you want to make sure is what you have. Again, you want to make sure that now for 3 months, it's what it is. Because again, you're out there to get a job. People sometimes say anything they could and to get this job. Now this 3 months, you're going to be able to see what's going on. And I use those 3 months is because a lot of our laws, I know where I'm in Connecticut, Bob, you're in California, maybe they're a little different in the part of the country. We have some people on from Canada here. There are different rules, but usually 3 months, the benefits kick in, the insurance kick in. All of these, if you have, I had profit sharing, 401ks, those kicked in, and you really want to say is 3 months is good enough time. I'm not this evil hatchet man, but if it's 3 months, you're responsible to the people that work for you. If they're not up to snuff with the values, then after 3 months, you need to part ways. I do have an exception to that rule is if you have the values and they can't make that position, you will. I always consider saying, I love this person. They have good value systems. They're really right there. Is let me find a spot for them. Let me go into the organizational chart and see a position to offer them that. So that's the second part. Bob, how do you help get the time for mentors? I'd like to turn this back over to you and saying, with this orientation, this 3-month orientation, how do you help mentors? How do you work with them? I mean, time is a resource, so you don't want to overwhelm your managers, your leaders, your supervisors, your office managers, but you do need this to have, again, more work in the beginning, less work at the end.
Well, it's very similar in construction. If you're going to paint a wall, you can put the best paint in the world on a terribly prepared wall, and it's going to look like junk. The more you prepare the wall, you can put inferior paint on that wall, and it still look pretty good. So it goes back to what you said before. How do we then, what's the effort? Is it worth it? And a lot of times you're so busy being busy that you haven't made that a priority. So first and foremost, you got to make it a priority. And if you don't do that, then prepare for pain. It'll ultimately come back, and then you'll have what I call a revolving door in your hiring process. The key there, I think, what Dominic's talking about, though, you've got to have leaders. So you have to develop leadership, first and second line of leadership within your organization. And that comes from putting together what I call a high performance culture. And 81% of successful businesses that were polled, again, going back to Harvard Review, found that they believed if an organization did not have a high performance culture, it was doomed. So what does that mean in your organization? What does high performance mean? So that everybody operates at the absolute best, and that you have to show that you care about your people, but not to the point you become a hostage to if they're not performers. And we go back to what Dominic said earlier, have a 3-month period, sign an agreement, a disengagement agreement. And in 3 months, either one of you can have a no-fault disengagement and pull back. Either one of them, the employee or you. If it's not working, they have to feel safe so that they don't become passive-aggressive in the company and sabotage. So mentors are grown. They're not, it's not a natural thing per se. We've gotten way away from that in our culture. Now, some cultures still have that. It's a coming of age type of thing. When we used to have development and people, when a chef would go work for free in Paris, maybe for years, has to have another job to make money, but in the place he wants to work under that chef, he's working under that chef for free, kind of an
Bob,
internship.
That's a good point here. And I think the word back in the medieval days, or when we had the Renaissance, They used to call that apprenticeship.
Exactly. Thank you.
You see a Leonardo da Vinci, or you see Michelangelo. Of course, those are the names we all know. But they were in apprenticeships for many, many years before they became their masters, and then they went on. We lost that ability, and we call them now mentors. But I found that to be, mentors are the thing where you meet with them. You meet with them periodically through those 3 months, and again, you go over leadership. You go over those systems. You go over those processes and templates.
Well, accountability is crucial to making progress. I think that a mentor has to be able to lay out a progress sheet with benchmarks of how well you're going to do along the way. And if you meet those things earlier on and you show that you have ambition to do better and you're desirous to improve your life and improve yourself, those are built into it, and you get to move further along that line, maybe faster. Some are going to move faster than others. A mentor, the key here is developing trust within your organization and dispelling fear. Sometimes in companies, even small ones, I found that a mentor actually was holding others back because they were afraid that if somebody showed up better than them, they were going to lose their position. So there has to be, there has to be good communication that, look, here's where you are. This is your expectation. So you first start with being able to hold the mentor accountable and responsible, and then he holds the next person. So it is, again, a culture. This is where all of you want to work and be the best.
Yeah, Bob, that is a culture. Like, I come from an Italian background, and I know my parents and grandparents that came to this country had the same issues. So they had to be careful. They were hard to get a job. They were looked upon as a certain level here. Working with the National Hispanic Landscape Alliance is the same situation. You find that a cultural thing is
exactly.
It's like a protective kind of thing is. I found in my business, we had about 150 men and women. Pretty much 140 of them were Hispanic, and in the beginning, yeah, sure, they had I had to be trusted to know that I wasn't going to hack them up, and those things happen with how you act throughout the way. So this way now they have that way of trust, that they trust you, that says is they can make mistakes, they can work hard and try different things, and they could mentor somebody because they have you're going to grow that way. They know that if you grow a foreman to a supervisor, it's not taking over their job. That's a cultural thing. Is that I had to work with that a lot. I was lucky to fortunate enough to have Juan Torres with us, and he understood the culture a lot more there. So that was a big thing. Is I have one example as a really good guy. I remember too. Is all of a sudden, I said, Juan, where's this guy? I don't want to mention his name. He was a really good guy, really good worker. And next thing you know, he's gone. Juan, what happened? And he said that he hit a curb and wrecked the front end. He bent it up or did something to it. It's fixable, but it's not it was still a little bit of money. And he was so afraid he left. So I knew everybody was around me. I was very cognizant of this. Again, I was more of a teacher at that time, besides yelling and screaming in like an Italian way and saying, let me just get this is the way it is. No. So I said, Juan, please get him back. Let's see what happened. Maybe it was the training. I know the man is good. Let's just see over there. And I recognized that people around me were seeing it, because those are the times I know I mentioned to you, look at the issue, come to me. That's how I started having people come to me. But it got them back in, and I was telling them. And I remember, I swear, one of my best. It was just such a good guy. We had him.
I remember that.
Yes, I have to say, the guy was very good. His name was Pedro, and he was So he came back in. People still around. He was
one of the best.
And we talked to him, and we discussed it, and it was part he didn't know. And we taught him over there, and he was more apologetic. He was a little squirmish, but that is the part where that's when you have that value system.
Keep this one thing in mind, and for all of you out there, hopefully you're still on. We often hire
quite a few people out there. Quite a few people are listening to us.
We have, when you hire somebody, and it was the strangest thing, but I began to find that it's true. And this is across the board, every company I've ever done, and I've done things, international companies out of Paris, I've done small little startup companies, it didn't matter. In every one of them, people try to recreate their upbringing, their personal life, their family life inside the workplace, even if it was dysfunctional and they got yelled at. So I had one owner who used to actually operate this way. He said the whippings will continue until morale improves. And he would just beat the heck out of his people and then be totally blindsided when they would leave and go to somebody else who treated them better. And sometimes we don't even know we're doing that, or people have a fear that, like in your case, that it's going to happen. And that goes back to the communication and knowing what's really important to a person and how they operate. So if you have people who know, and that goes back to, again, educating everybody. This is how we are as a business. This is how we do business. And then you got to repeat it over and over and over because people don't trust it. They just don't trust it. And especially if it's really different from what they've ever known.
But also, Bob, I have to add to this is when you say they don't trust it, it's probably because as an owner, myself included, in the heyday is, you would be yelling and screaming. You'd be nervous. You'd be aggravated. You'd be tired. You'd be doing all these things that's happening here. So you have to really understand. I think that sometimes once you start, you have to become, like you said, a leader. When you're doing this mentoring, it is so valuable that you bring this back over here on.
Let's go back to that for a second. The mentoring, first of all, your mentors, and I'll exchange that with leaders within a company, because you can have managers. Forget the word manager, it just simply means to maintain. Think about leadership. And leadership means that they're willing to develop people. A good leader relies on his constituents. A good leader recognizes when somebody is actually better at something than they are themselves and do not feel threatened by it. Right. And part of the mentor's relationship is to know how your company operates, the values. Again, we're going to go to that often. What did your company stand for, and how do you make decisions? So when they're out there alone and they run into a problem, they go down, they tick down the values of the company in order to work with something that may have come up, all right? They're flexible enough to recognize what the values are, and that's how they make decisions. There was a hotel chain for many years, very high-end hotel chain, that always won the J.D. Powers award every year because each employee, from the top executive down to the person checking people in and taking their suitcases up to their rooms, had the ability to make a decision of at least $2,500 decision if it was needed to rectify a problem for their customers. And they taught them how to do that within their company, within their hotel system. And it worked. And you might be a bellboy, but you have the authority to fix people's problems within the realm of dollar figure of $2,500 plus all the values that that company stood for. And they trained every employee how to make decisions based on their values. And that takes time. That's not something that is normal, because we all grow up with our own values in our own families and how things are done. Oh, this is how things are done in my family. And so you don't realize that you need to help people learn a new set of them in that circumstance. Otherwise, they'll just fall back on what they always know. And the more stress that happens, by the way, the more intense a situation is, the more people fall back on what they've always done. That's why you'll see somebody making childish mistakes when under extreme pressure. If they haven't developed new systems, new values over their life as they grew up, they fall back on the only thing they know how to react. And some people scream and yell, as you said, because that's what you were taught when you hit a certain threshold. So that takes time.
That's going, Bob. That's great right there, and you're correct. That is going to be our. I have to say, you're doing take a little hints over here. Our second mistake here, but right now it is an issue of how the company treats their people and how they mentor their people. So we have about another 10 minutes over here, and I want to get into the last section of the first mistake, is career development. Once you get to that 3-month mark, have yourself an interview process again. Go back in there and talk about it. Check it out. See if this person is the right person. Values. We have the values. You have those systems, the process, the templates. You talk to the mentor. You talk to the people around there. Is this the right fit? Okay. And as a leader, you're responsible. I have a question that came in here. Is how do you get rid of these? The question was, how do you get rid of them? Let me tell you, it was one of the hardest thing is to train people but it's one of those things where that's your job as an owner.
It's about being truthful. It's about being truthful.
Taking care of all the other people here. So the last section that we're going to go through is, once you get to that, career development. How do you career develop over here? Now, I know that I put a process in place, and we did this twice a year. We had a self questionnaire, about 5 or 6 pages. Again, it was all questions on technical skills, all questions on system skills, all skills on leadership, and all questions on values. They did it themselves, but then the areas that we developed them were systems. We had constant system processes and education. Even your position, you had education on your position. And also at each and every time is values. When those mistakes came on, what happened? I wrote down these mistakes just to bring it back, not to do some bitch slapping, but just to be able to say here's what's the problem, here's how we fixed it, and here's how we went there.
Can I add to that? I think something that's very underrated are the systems. Systems is part of your resources. That's one of the primary 4 resources that exist. And systems also get to play a leadership role. It is a non-human leader within the organization, because your systems determine what you should be doing at that point, and will also reveal where the weak points are and the flaws are in anything that didn't work out the way it should have, if that makes sense. So I think you're really hitting on a very, very important piece. And go ahead.
No, that's exactly right, Bob. These are resources, and so when you're teaching everybody, and because you have the positions, you have these systems and these templates, and like I said, I know my second value was system oriented. But that's how we did the mundane things, the mundane things that go over there, but not the important things. So it is a resource, your employees, but systems are. It's a good way of looking at it. I never looked at it that way, but you hit the nail right in the head.
Well, so if you have somebody that comes in and ignores the systems, you may have systems in place, but are they sabotaged? Because you've got a manager or a foreman or supervisor, or even the owner comes in throwing out all kinds of problems because there's a fire, and having 6 people working on the same problem, unbeknownst to each other. They don't even know each other's working on the same problem. It creates chaos. Whereas if the system is in place, you follow the system, it'll get it corrected a lot faster. And that's also, when you put a system in place, it's the same thing as doing your upfront work and training each person in that system, and to respect everybody else's job and system in place. That's another thing I think is important in the education of anybody. The least person and the highest person need to be pretty clearly aware of everybody's value to the company, that everybody in your company or organization has value, whether they're in the office or in operations or out in the field. Doesn't matter. Everybody is an important cog. And unfortunately, that's part of my job, is when I go in and help all these different factions and divisions work together and respect each other, and then operate accordingly. So that's an important piece that systems play, is they can connect each of these different areas really well. And so that's why I'm kind of harping on that part.
No, that's a very good point, Bob, is because in our audiences, I go into many companies now, and I had this in my company, so it really worked well. Treat each and every person, every department should treat another department like a client. If you
Hmm.
are in the accounting department or you in production, this is production department, and you create work orders and you create payroll slips and you create receipts to be able to get paid in accounts payable, if you treated the accounting department like a client, and a lot of these people in production, I did all the work, I did all this thing, I don't have enough time. You would never treat a client like that. So if you treated your departments, each and every one, treated like a client, I know if I was in production, I want to make sure that the work orders were done correctly, effectively, everything, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. I want to make sure my payroll slips are all done, the people are there. I want to make sure the receipts are proper. Same thing like sales. You hear this in sales. Well, I got the sales. I'm the salespeople. Leave me alone, kind of thing. Earlier, I told you I had to fire somebody. I swear, one of my best salesperson. Why? Because he would not follow the systems. He
Hmm.
would not help production. He didn't treat production like a client. He would just be, all over the lot. Here's the paper. Even though here's a system to fill it all out for production,
Well,
he wouldn't be putting it
to
out.
go
He just
back to
throw it at it.
actually training people to run the system, I've seen companies that had 8 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in receivables still sitting on the books. Should have never been there. By people who could well afford to pay their bill.
Right. So this is the kind of thing that career development. I like to be able to. There's some questions in the audience over here. And one of the questions was the cost. You know, what are the costs of this? It seems to be just a hell of a lot more work to do than to not. Do you have an answer for that question?
Well, to me, I use a formula. The perceived value of anything is the cost of no change minus the cost of change. Okay. And change is I think is the number one thing. Everybody says, well, there's some things we need to change. There's some things we don't want to change, by the way. I've often seen an organization where you don't want to change. The cost is more of you have to look at one of the four primary resources, which is capital. And capital means dollars or money. How do you do it? It's a catch-22, especially if cash flow is low, then it's about being able to manage the dollars more effectively so it's the highest return on what you're spending. So if you're asking what's the dollar number, the bigger cost is time and willingness to put the time and effort into learning to be more effective, learning to be better at interviewing if that's part of your job. If you have an HR department, are they doing as good a job as they could? And so the cost dollar figure can change accordingly to whatever your needs are at any time. Good news, in most successful companies, say over the 255, 500,000 mark, have some of those things going for them. They may not be as efficient as they could be, yet they got it going for them. So you can use modules and put in various modules that can reduce a lot of costs. But in what you're asking, if you want to really take a look at it, the first place is where is your business, your general business status, and how is that business operating? Where are you putting dollars that are not getting the bang for your buck? And because there are a lot of expenses. The largest expense is going to be probably payroll, maybe equipment. Equipment, though, becomes a deduction, so that is offset. And generally, it's taxes and employees, maybe insurance in some cases. So I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I think the question was with the person, is it sounds like a lot of cost, and I think I'm going to put this in perspective here. Is I I was in Killington mountain skiing a few years back when I had my partnership, and I recall my partner called me up and started talking. There's going to be a 14, 15-inch storm coming in. It's going to be in a couple of days. Now I'm up there skiing for the week, so I recall talking, saying, "Yep, everything's all set. The equipment's all set. the trucks are all set, the people are all set, the work orders are all set, the administrators are all set, the dispatching's all set to go. Now we're waiting on how it's going to hit and when we're going to start and call the event. Well, he goes, well, when you coming in, to walk the halls? And I go, no, I'm up in Killington. I'm skiing in Killington for the week. He's going, well, how the hell we're going to make money? What are you, crazy? And he was like just beyond the scope. Again, we have two partners. One's running systems, processes, development, and one is a sales oriented. You need to be right in the mix of it. Right. So what happened was that's how I had systems, processes, of course, but as one of the resources. But these employees were trained for that. They did it much better than I did, much better job than I could ever possibly do. That's what it allowed me. Now, I can't put a cost on that, but I do know that I enjoyed my week up there and I made money. There's no such thing as work. They always hear work on your business and not in your business kind of. I kind of feel that's a little bit on the nonsense side. Maybe I didn't work and shoveled snow anymore. If I had to, I did. If I had to be a dispatcher, I know that I had to relieve something in a three-day nightmare. I would work.
Let's address that question a little bit clearer. If you look at how do you want it to go, more than likely you need to look at a 3-year window and what you're going to put into that 3-year window so that it's spread out. Okay, it's amortized over a period of time because you pick certain areas to fix. One of the best ways that I think it works is first take a real, truthful look at your company and where are the messes, where are the glitches, where are the flaws, where are things that aren't working as well as they should, and just clean up one of those. Don't try to do everything all at once. If you've got a company doing, let's say, $500,000 a year or more, you can't just turn that around and implement something company-wide and expect it to work. It's not going to happen.
It'll never happen.
It'll never happen.
Never happen.
So
I agree
you
with you.
take one thing, no more than 2 in a year, big things. It's usually one big thing, and that's what you work on. Now, the biggest problem is people try to fix something that's not a problem. If you have a flat tire, that can be a problem. You can fix it in a number of ways, right? A lot of ways to fix a flat tire. Now, if that same vehicle shows up with a flat tire every day, then we got a condition, all right? Conditions need to be managed. So is it coming up with a nail in that tire every day? Is it have a slow leak? Is the person driving that truck picking up, going through a construction zone somewhere that's causing this flat? What is it? It's a conditioning. You have to manage conditions. So recognizing the two. So if we look at dollars, and if this person, I don't know if they're asking for a dollar figure because I don't know that. Depends on what a company needs. Depends on what they're going to do. But if you take one thing, they can be coached to that, or a nominal fee can be actually fairly small compared to whatever that issue is costing them today.
Well, I think if I have to say is this is all you're correct. There's all hidden costs with this over here, and you're correct over here. You could measure if you send them to a Dale Carnegie course. You could measure if you send them to a class on accounting or QuickBooks. You could send you go to an association. You could put those things down. You cannot figure out if I was teaching a class and on systems, on some of the systems that I have, for instance, work order generation to verification to invoicing, when I was teaching that system to the various departments, well, I gather I could probably, again, say, okay, there's 2 hours or an hour here, or, there's 10 people, that's 10 hours, on and on and on. How do you measure me being in Killington?
Well, the leadership, it's how it functions when things are really pressured. When pressure hits, how does a company function? Are people using the system? There's 2 reasons they wouldn't. One is they didn't learn it, or 2, the leadership is not holding them to that. I used to be asked to do these, I call them flash in the plan trainings. And I knew they were sales trainings. And I knew that sales would increase for 2 weeks to 3 months. and then they were going to drop off because it was a flash in the pan. It was nothing but motivation. And I kept telling the companies, what you need is a training process and system in place so that your sales rise up and then stay there. But you got to expect your people to use what they learn. And so often if it breaks down, it's because the people have not got the buy-in in the organization, and that means your leaders. So to me, you got to train the people at the top, the people who are responsible for other folks in your company. And if that doesn't happen, if there's no buy-in, then again, my favorite phrase is prepare for pain, because it's going to happen. There will be pain. And so you have a lower expectation culture. And those companies are generally ultimately doomed because they crash. If the owner's not there, everything drops off. Quality, everything drops off, because again, you built your company based on who you are, which means you're an entrepreneur. You're probably a pretty sharp person out there. You know what to do and how to do it. And you've got to find a way to transfer that to the leaders in your organization. If that comes through education systems within that education. So, and you can't quantify. You can qualify and quantify whether the system's working or not. It just takes time. And that's what the big investment is going to be, time and willingness to put in the effort to the shifts that need to be made in the organization.
Agreed. I have one more question here, and then I think we're going to close up here for the first mistake. And then, well, we have two more mistakes here. But I am to show one of the questions that I have here, and let me read over here. Is it's again, what kind of education do you offer? And I guess I could be able to answer that over here. I also have a little slide here I'd like to bring up here. But of course, you're going to have the position. From the position, you're going to know what the skill sets they're going to need. So you're going to know what education they need. So if it was a bookkeeper, you're going to need bookkeeping. If you have an arborist part of your division, you're going to need to help them with arbor care. These are technical kind of things they need over here. I also really think that values are taught while you're doing things. It's listed, it's put down of here. But one of the things I've had every year, and Bob, you were part of working with me, was the education. And I'm going to put this up here, screen here. Let me put this, it's one of the education things we have here is entire screen share. And I am going to go to this, and I am going to put this up here. This is, I'm just wondering if that showed up to everybody here.
Yeah.
Let's see if it comes up on the screen. There it is right there, and should come up as shortly because we have a little lag here. So this is one of my educations. I had this every year, and it took time out here. So to the question to the young lady out there, and this is one from Colorado, which is, I appreciate the question here is, I have a little grid here is system education. So down the column of departments, systems, templates, and employees. So going across, you have the departments. So in the sales department, this is a system that was generating work orders and completing the work orders, verifying the work orders to see if they were done correctly, and then invoicing. It touched the sales, it touched production, and it touched accounting. I have a little liaison person in there, but that's just between the departments. Now, in the systems, you have the signed contract, you have work order generations, you have various, you can't see, but you have work order, you have a bunch of four different systems there. And then at the very end, you have payroll and you have invoicing systems. There are the templates, and there are the employees that do the work. This was done every single year. So that when you had the systems and you re-educated and then tweaked, re-educated. So the question to this young lady in Colorado is, these are the kind of things that you do because systems run the company, and the people run these systems. So this is a little bit of a of something that we had. Now,
if I may dovetail, part of that was to bring the people who are using them in, because they're front line. They're front line of utilizing either the systems or sales, and how they could give their input to improve them. That's the tweaking part. And that was very important because people want to feel that they have a say with what they do. They like, and especially if what they do is they do a good job, they want to feel like they have some input to what's going on. What I teach, I've done sales, management, leadership, things that and how to get departments working together, how to, and also helping companies just even develop a true set of values and how do we educate and spread that out to the rest of the company. So I did a lot of facilitating for years. I used to do 35 accountability meetings a month, and I facilitated that. So it's about utilizing the talent you already have and or hiring the talent you need. Because Dominic didn't tell you, but we went through 3 full office staff before we found the right mix. And he found the right mix, and I'm going to tell you, it shot off like a rocket. When we had the right mix and people were educated well, and it was clear about what the values were and what they truly meant and how to make decisions based on them, man, it took off. And that's how you do that. You look for talent, and that's how you do it.
So that is, everybody, that's mistake number 1, is developing your people. It's a system, it's a process. So it's one of the keys is the values, hire into values. Second key is mentoring and orientating. And the third is a development plan. I'd like to be able to offer the audience, we have quite a few people on here. Again, Dominic, Domenic at 7of7best.com. And I also have this this career development form that could be able to address a lot of the areas and help you be able to put in place an education program and projects for individuals. And I want to be able to offer that again to there and the other gifts here. Now we're coming to the end of the hour here. We're a little bit longer than the hour. I'd like to be able to end this conversation here with just knowing that there's one commonality that we all have in business, and that commonality, that thread, is revenues. Now, how do we get more revenues? How do we get this revenues? It is more sales. That's just it. And producing it. So that's the only one thread we have. So it's key for us in the business world to start putting things in place to get more sales. We wear too many hats to get more sales. We have to produce it. The key is systems. The first mistake are hiring, orientation, and career development systems and processes. I'd like you to be able to think about this in a longer scale. We have some very good programs here that we offer here, 7 of 7 Best Business Life. I'm not here to sell you this product over here. I am going to tell you that I am offering, and also Bob is offering for the audience. We have quite a few people on there. We have enough for about 15, but one-on-one strategy sessions. I know we had the first mistakes, and we'd probably work specifically on those mistakes. If you want something else, you can. I just want to tell you, just write to us again, write to me at Domenic, Domenic, at 7of7best.com, and I'll start registering you and put you into a strategy meeting. It's a 45 free. I want to get to know you guys and gals out there. I'm here to help. I love what I do. I know Bob loves it. We worked for 25 years. So I want to be able to offer that to you. Coming up Thursday, we have the second mistake that frustrate owners while they're growing and making more profits. Please join us for another lively talk. We're going to have another guest speaker in that area. And thank you very much. Bob, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out from California.
My pleasure.
And everybody that's across the country, we have quite a few people right across the country and into Canada. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Dominic A. Chirella. Bob Bullock, 7 to 7 Best Business and Life Strategy. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you Thursday, and I look forward to hearing from you with these emails to get some strategy sessions going. Thank you very much.